Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tom Osa from the Workforce Development Board of Rockland County. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Friday Forums. We conduct these forums every Friday at 12:30 in the afternoon. The goal is to bring on guest speakers and issues that directly involve Rockland County and people that are looking to improve Rockland County over the course of time. Again, I'm your host, Tom Osa. This Friday Forum, as always, is sponsored by the Workforce Development Board of Rockland County. The mandate there is create jobs. I think that's going to be more important than ever, especially given what we've gone through over the last 4 to 6 months. Also sponsored by the Chamber Alliance of Rockland. That is a group of 8 different chambers of commerce throughout Rockland County. North Rockland, New City, Nanuet, Pearl River, Nyack, Piermont, Suffern, I think Sloatsburg as well. So a decent number of chambers of commerce, and their job is to really connect with the business community. So it's a good group of people that are sponsoring these forums, and of course Rockland Web, the technology arm of the whole thing. Deborah Thomas is usually on. I believe that she's away for the day, but Phyllis Tucker always hops in. Thank you for joining us, Phyllis.
Thank you, Tom. I look forward to the conversation and Robert's point on this, which is such an important issue that's certainly developed over these many years.
Great. And you can find out more about the Workforce Development Board of Rockland by going to rocklandswork.org. Especially during the COVID crisis, we've loaded up a multitude of different resources for both employees, individuals, as well as their employers. Things about unemployment insurance, how to file for various benefits, resources for employers to be able to apply for SBA loans, and things that will help them to keep their business moving along throughout and after the crisis, as well as the ability to find all of the previously created Friday forums. We're up to episode 19 this time. All the Friday forums are loaded up. Under the news tab, you click on Small Business Friday Forums, and you could see all of them right in that location. We have Ed Day a few weeks ago, Stephanie Compasso from the new redeveloped Rockland County Career Center. So she's on as well. So let's go back. Our guest today is someone that I've just recently become familiar with over the last several months. He's a colleague on the Workforce Development Board with me and many others. Robert Pitkofsky, located in New City, New York. So he was on a Friday forum a few weeks ago. We were planning for just to kind of like a small memorial service for a colleague that we really loved, Paul Pipperato, who recently passed away. And Robert and I had a great conversation. It just flowed. That's the only way that I could put it. So I kept on egging him. I was like, Robert, you got to come back on, come back on, because I think it'll be a really good show. And I happened to catch a few posts that he made on Facebook about the recent 30th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And Robert is very, very deeply involved in advocacy for people and families that have special needs. Here's a little bit of career highlights. He's almost 20 years practicing law. Was also former in-house counsel at the Anti-Defamation League. Serves on advisory boards of a multitude of not-for-profits, and we're going to talk about a lot of those today. And he also takes care of families with special needs and guides them through the process. And I know a little bit about this on my own because I do have an uncle that is special needs. So there were several challenges over the years that my mother and I had to navigate through for my uncle, who's a wonderful guy. Actually taught me how to drum, in my opinion. He's just a fantastic dude. So he's a really good guy. So Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's really, it's really quite a pleasure to be here with this group. And of course, the Workforce Development Board doing so much to take care of so many of our community members, some of those disaffected members are youth. It's really an honor to be part of that group. As we know, been a member of that since what, February, March? I'm looking at Debbie, February, Marchish. But it's really hit the ground running, Tom. This is just a great forum and a great platform to discuss so many things that relate to our community. And today, of course, the 30th anniversary of just a watershed piece of legislation.
And you and I had a really great conversation, like I mentioned, and we kind of like bounced ideas back and forth. You are, like myself, a chatty individual. So the ideas, they just bounce. And it's something that I think that, people that are more, and nothing wrong with it. I mean, my girlfriend's very, very quiet and, introspective and everything like that. But it's not something that can be explained to introspectives, because they'll look at us and be like, why are you talking so much? And it's like, because we want to talk.
Thank you.
It's what we do. But that's and exactly there's room, I think, for everybody, whether they're and again, obviously, focusing on the day. It's important to make sure that we empower everybody, whether they're able to speak, whether they need support in speaking, etc. I mean, all of these matters, and I think that's what this legislation, quite frankly, is all about. It's making sure that all of those voices are heard. So that's a perfect segue into our topic today.
And in terms of advocating for children and families with special needs, so you yourself have personal experience with such. Tell us a little bit about it.
I do. So right, having sort of charged down the road as a having clerked, a judicial clerk, and then been a commercial litigator for a number of years, and then gone in-house. Recognizing the needs. I mean, again, when your family is touched, and I think your profession and your family change. And I think that it has really opened my eyes to the level of struggle that many consumers, that many individuals, and many families feel in this area, navigating the special education system. From preschool special ed, early intervention, CPSE, all of just on the education side, all of the different acronyms, and trying to figure out how to advocate. I am a chatty guy, Tom. I have a big mouth. I'm very comfortable with that in my skin, but I realize that so many families don't know, they don't have the knowledge, and they don't have that. So I have, over the last number of years, continued to expand and grow my practice. To take care of this community, as well as the corporate not-for-profit work that I've always been doing, but to take care of this community, because I realize that this is very personal for me. And then obviously recognizing just the plethora of organizations that here in Rockland County that take such loving care. And I see Dan Lukens from Joanio here. The friends that we've made over the last number of years in support of our family, in support of our community, have been incredible. And looking forward, the advocacy that we're doing statewide right now, in a variety of different areas. Again, it's just eye-opening, and so it is very true. As my slide says, that the ADA. Is a watershed civil rights piece of legislation, up there with Title VII and the Civil Rights Act, et cetera, and has really opened opened up opportunities that now I think many of us take for granted, for our family, for our friends and our neighbors that are.
That was under George W. I think it was signed under George H.W. Bush back in 1990, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, 30 years. 30 years ago. It's when things happened, and great things do happen on a bipartisan basis, when people are coming together, when people come together and get work done. And so very, very proud of that legacy.
So the legislation, I mean, it must have been crafted for at least several years, possibly even a decade or more. I mean, leading up to a signing, I mean, there's so many moving parts that have to be worked out from many different agencies, from many different areas of law. So
absolutely. Dan, I wanted to also give you an opportunity, just briefly to just jump in. I did have a little video I wanted to try to highlight some of the organizations, I had a little video from Bridges, which gave a little bit of an introduction as they, celebrated the ADA, but to give you obviously a little time to sort of opine on that as well.
Yeah, I think you make some great points. I think an important thing to look at when you talk about bipartisanship is the way that the law was crafted. It was put together in a way, the legal basis was a reasonable accommodation. And that really afforded like a kind of an evolutionary change and not a sudden upheaval. It really made it possible for businesses to adapt and to, and so what we've seen in the subsequent years is that the courts have been able to develop more definition to that. But, the time lag, though, has really made it something that made it work for business as well. So I think that's important. We all have to get to the same place. It's not one side or another forcing us along.
That's a great, it's a great point. Tom, do you think it made sense at this point to, just in terms of some of the introduction, to maybe to roll a little that video at this point?
I think so. You sent me the link, right? The one on Facebook?
I did, yeah, I sent you the link. Starting maybe at 30 seconds, going to maybe 2:30.
Okay, so let's bring that up now. Hang on one moment. Also have to make sure.
Yeah, we had an opportunity to speak with with our friends from Juanio, from Venture, from ARC and Bridges, and they all work so closely in taking care of our community, and a variety of different projects. Obviously, so it's just wonderful that we have such partnership. I've heard from all of the all of the leaders of all of them in this, and so it's just, I feel very grateful. And I think that describes the special needs community generally, that it is a very collaborative group, as we know with not-for-profits generally in Rockland, but the subset in terms of our our special needs not-for-profits. So
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, maybe 30 seconds there, and that's
Act. Today we celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ADA. People with disabilities proved that there was a system that considered them less than equal, that didn't treat them as citizens and marginalized them from opportunities and freedoms. The actions and efforts of the disability community, past and present, changed the world. The Netflix documentary Crip Camp shows exactly how the disability community mobilized to change the course of the future. For able-bodied folks like me, it's important that we take the time to listen from the people who can tell you why the ADA matters and why following through and enforcement of this law is critical to an inclusive and accessible community.
The ADA means access to me. Being able to access the community like people without disabilities do. I can go out to restaurants, go to community events, see a movie. Very simple things like buy groceries at the supermarket. When I visit new places, I know there will be accessibility to some degree because of the ADA.
So as someone with congenital cerebral palsy, the ADA means to me, it represents progress. It's crazy to think that 30 years ago, I wouldn't be able to have the same freedoms I do right now.
For me, as a person with a disability, the ADA means the world to me. It is my civil rights. It is the protections and laws that keep me and everybody with a disability safe.
The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law on July 26, 1990 by President George H.W. Bush. The ADA is one of America's most comprehensive pieces of civil rights legislation. It prohibits discrimination, requires reasonable accommodation, and guarantees for people with disabilities the same opportunities as everyone else to participate in the mainstream of American life. Modeled after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, the ADA is an equal opportunity law for people with disabilities.
Deinstitutionalization. The roots of the ADA can be traced to a movement of people committed to getting people with mental and physical disabilities out of institutions like nursing homes or residential settings that stripped people of their dignity and worth. This included the return of Vietnam veterans who were disabled, Education, another area. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, passed in 1975, which required that public education be accessible to students with disabilities. While disabled folks fought for their rights and liberties, so were African and Black Americans in the civil rights movement. People with varying disabilities created a nationwide push for civil rights for people with disabilities. The first independent living center was birthed out of this movement, and it played a key role, along with other disability advocacy organizations and individuals willing to stand with the disability community and demand equal rights under the law.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. We will have that resource available in the PowerPoint presentation. The great video, and I learned a little bit. I didn't know that it was crafted after the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I had no idea. So that it sets those precedents that build up over the course of time.
Absolutely, it's an incredible piece of legislation, and again, I think that's why that video, of course, produced locally. Carlos Martinez, our executive director of Bridges, so aptly pointed out. Provides that basis. It's a generation old now, so people don't even there's so many younger people that don't even realize that it wasn't in place, which is amazing. Wanted to go through just a little bit, I guess, in terms of the law itself and sort of how it's structured. The protections are just simply that. It's to prevent discrimination, provide those access, Title I employment. Applying to those with over 15 employees, requiring those employers to provide reasonable accommodations, and obviously, making those establishments and making sure that those accommodations are in place without undue hardship to the employer, but making sure that folks can have the ability to access employment. Title II, public services, state and local governments, making sure that those activities are also as well are accessible to those with disabilities, and then carrying through to Title III, which is access. Access to public accommodations. A lot of those apply to a private entity standpoint. And actually, this may be interesting as we do you, Tom. Title III and how it affects website accessibility as well. And I'm very interested in terms of how that affects. That's not a 15 or more employees like a Title I. Title III, making sure, for example, that when you have a website and you run your mouse over, I'm gonna do my mouse here. You run your mouse over an image, and whether all text pops up to make sure that if there's other technologies that are in place on those websites, that those that are hard of hearing, will have that accessibility. All of that is critical. So yeah, I'd love to hear, since this is obviously your area of expertise.
Yeah, we have a decent amount of experience with this. So about 2 years ago, we decided to make the jump to ensuring that all the websites that we host. So, I mean, I'm not going to make this into a commercial, but we're a web development company. We build websites, we host them, we secure them, we maintain them, SEO, the whole thing. About 2 years ago, and search engine optimization is based on the premise of accessibility. You want to make everything as easy to find as possible for everyone that visits the website. So about 2 years ago, we decided that we were going to install tools that allow every website owner to be able to easily turn their website into 100% accessible of a site. So we use certain tools. They're free. They're given to all of our clients. Now, the tricky part is convincing them to use the tools. And we're still in the process of trying to convince some of our clients to go in, use the tools that are there, because, I mean, they can have us do it, but, I mean, a lot of it is time consuming because they have tons of content and they have to go through and add all the image tags to each of the pages and such. And it actually bit, not going into detail, but it bit one of our clients in the wazoo. Someone came through a website, found that the website was not accessible for them, for their needs. And it also had to do with their specific business, like their business wasn't set up at that time with certain things. At least they didn't communicate them. And they ended up going back and forth about that. I won't go into detail, but basically they contacted us real quick. They're like, what can we do? Like, well, good news. You already have those tools, and we're going to go in and we're going to make sure that everything is 100% good to go. So everything worked out, but it was a little, it was an urgent call that I got on a Friday afternoon, which was not enjoyable, but everything worked out in the end.
Everything worked out. Yeah, I mean, it has been traditionally and also an area of litigation, class action litigation, et cetera, and against big companies. Obviously, there is a private cause of action. In some of these areas, to make certain that accessibility, that it's been, and there's a split in the circuits right now in terms of whether, those websites are considered, public accommodations, et cetera. But that law continues to evolve, as it always does. Title IV is also a big area, and I wanted to share an opinion from Michelle Green, who is also a fellow member of our Access VR board. Title IV also requires our telephone and internet companies to provide a nationwide system of interstate telecommunications and the closed captioning systems and other relays for those, again, with hearing loss. Michelle had also recounted she was unable to be here today, but in addition to the physical accessibility that we always think about, ramps and obviously, all of those sort of physical accommodations, it's really, very interesting that, as part of her career in supporting those in workforce development, she actually had to, as part of her day-to-day, had to interpret phone calls, to allow individuals with accessibility, with disabilities, with an inability to hear, and actually had to spend time working with them and translating. So we've, again, this law did something about that. It created the vehicle to make sure that those communications can happen. It's self-empowering to allow folks to be able to access the community as well at large, and all of those things that, again, all of us that are presently able-bodied take for granted.
And also, just to note, for those of you that want to learn more about any of the organizations that we're discussing, they're all typically Rockland-based, Access VR, Joanio, Bridges, Venture. Those are also available as a resource on the PowerPoints that will be available at rocklandwork.org, just so that everyone's aware of that. So we mentioned Access VR. There's also a few, and I'm sorry, and so you had other provisions that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, no, and I was also wanted, of course, add the ARC of Rockland as well. Fortunate, wanted to definitely mention, Carmine, I'm, fortunate to work, on the Business Advisory Council of many or most, these organizations, and they just do so much, to encourage, to enhance, to support. A community that, again, it's not always, this isn't always a chat, we're talking about charity, we're talking about workforce development. We want to encourage folks that of all abilities to access our employment opportunities in our community as a whole, to the best of their ability. That provides support. It's not charity, it's, it's just support to be able to access all of that. And so, yes, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that additional part.
Absolutely. And we have other members of various organizations on, so we had, as you mentioned, Access VR. Michelle wasn't able to join us, but she, by the way, also was a guest on a previous Friday forum. You can also find that on rocklandwork.org. And then you mentioned,
yeah, and Dan from Joanio, and Vanessa, I believe you're from Camp Venture? From Venture.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Venture.
Yes. So would love to get your perspective as well in terms of the ADA.
Yeah.
Put me on the spot here. Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
I was told I wouldn't have to speak. Just listen. But that's okay. The ADA has done wonders. I do have family members who are disabled. I have two. They have received services and have gotten jobs in the community due to the ADA. Where they sat at home for at least 4 years before they got that. My brother, who's also disabled, didn't start school until he was in 2nd grade.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. it's a different, it feels like you've entered a club. At least that's how it felt for me. You know, when you sort of entered the, you know, entered a different club, you know, in terms of the level of support, talking about, again, IDEA, which is, you know, which is foundational right now to allowing children and to access benefits. The ADA obviously having impact on Section 504, which is also another educational law. Again, providing those supports, reasonable accommodation. That's really the critical piece here. That, you know, in order to bring people to the ability that they can to access. And
then
everything.
I also wanted to mention Mike Emsworth is on.
Oh, I didn't. It must have slipped off. Absolutely. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike. I got you unmuted, Mike. Are you there?
Can you hear me? No.
We're a little quiet. And Mike, you're from Venture as well?
Okay, well, we'll try and get back to Mike in a moment. Mike, if you're able to get your mic, the mic of Mike.
The mic of Mike.
Yeah, right.
Mike is on the phone today because his computer doesn't have a camera.
Doesn't have a
But
camera.
he's the Assistant Director of Employment Services. He's new to Camp Venture. Actually, he's back with Camp Venture. He was with Camp Venture, left, and now he's back again.
Yeah, it's amazing the work that we've been able to do. I'm fortunate to serve on the Business Advisory Council of Venture, and the Just a, you know, we've been working diligently on the Just a Buck project, which is just a gem in. I know you're from North Rockland, Tom. You know, just a gem in Garterville. It's amazing when you put some material and talk about the impact that store has had on the North Rockland community. There's just a lot of love, but it also is such a you know, an opportunity for many folks to have supported employment and to contribute to the community. It's again, it's a testament to the ADA. It's a testament to the power of our local organizations in being just a vital part of our workforce.
So Robert, as let's say the typical consumer or the typical business owner in Rockland County, or the typical just person that's concerned about the future of Rockland and all of its different services and intertwining mechanisms, what can the average person do to help one or more of these organizations? I mean, the Captain Obvious thing is donate, but what's the what's the first step really? What if we're coming into this just blindly not knowing how to get involved, what would you recommend?
Right. I mean, we, in the disability community, as with, lots of different areas, there are a lot of moving pieces. It starts locally. Right now, I'm fortunate to be working with just a talented group of disability advocates around the state, talking in terms of, from a special education standpoint, what the impact haven't even talked about COVID yet, and what the impact is in terms of our special needs, our special needs community and our students. That's it's a tremendous area, and it's happening very fast. We know obviously that a lot of just life-changing decisions right now are being made by executive order, obviously from the governor as a result of COVID. And so having allies have that lens. I mentioned before, it's walking into a club. We were kind of talking about with Vanessa, sort of walking into a club. Right. I think making the club bigger. Absolutely. And making sure that we have a greater awareness of the issues and how they impact those with special needs is really, really critical. So as we're looking at all of those issues in those areas that impact all of our lives, as we're so impacted in COVID here, as we continue to quarantine and are concerned, it's just recognizing, and what about? And looking, even just changing that. And I see Debbie had a word as well.
Yeah, I would just like to add on behalf of the perspective of the Workforce Development Board, we have many advocates that serve on our board from this community. And we have, certainly we have Jill Warner has been a long-time advocate on our board from Juanio. And we have Matt from Venture, who serves on the executive committee, as well as Michelle from Access VR. And with all of this expertise and knowledge on our board, we decided it's important in terms of workforce to get the word out to our business leaders. And what better way to do that than to bring businesses on our board that have experience and expertise, as Robert does, in the field and knowledge, who can educate business leaders, as well as business owners who have brought on individuals with barriers to employment and have been very successful in changing the culture of their own businesses by employing members of this community. And as we know that there have been such limited opportunities to bring in well-trained, qualified employees, at our last meeting, Michelle celebrated the fact that one of her clients was starting a job beginning at $100,000. A high-level position with very little tweaking and modification, was able to go into a job and be a successful employee. And the fact of the matter is 75% of this community currently is unemployed. Right. This is a huge talent pool that as a board, we're looking to see how can we match and modify, tweak to benefit the employers in our community and help them gain a talented pool of clients for their workforce. So working together with not only our advocates, money is good, but information and talent is power. And we're looking, how can we shift the culture and perspective in our community to be inclusive and to be productive, because when we raise the tide, all the boats float. And we're looking to do that with all of our neighbors. And certainly the dollar store is my favorite place to go, and I'm looking to be part of that community as well.
Okay.
Highly agree.
Just to add on to that, and when we had Michelle Green from Access VR on, and I'm sure Juanio, Venture, all the organizations have programs similar to this, but she had highlighted the fact that many of these programs offer a connection with the employers to bring on individuals that have special needs, and training and resources are provided so that, I mean, bottom line, me as a business owner, this is a very good thing to hear. Low risk, and possibly, I mean, again, just from a business standpoint, can also increase profit margins based on the resources and the availability of all the information. It reduces the amount of time to onboard the typical employee. So if those resources are available, and Michelle had pointed it out, I'm sure everybody here can point this out too, those resources are available, and these are New York State and federal resources that are readily available to local employers. Simply by contacting any of these organizations and finding out how they can get involved and connecting with these people, the individuals with special needs that are looking to work.
Absolutely, it's so palpable and so impactful. I think, yeah, Michelle is a tremendous resource. It's incredible the programs that employers don't know. Obviously, we're chamber members. You know, we're chamber folks. You know. The average Main Street business don't recognize that there are dollars that are available. You know, to hire folks from that may have disabilities, to become profitable, to become productive workers quickly, and to do it, quite frankly, on you know, on state government dollars at this point. You know, which is it's just an incredible resource. It's been in place. It's a diamond in the rough. I'm just so grateful, as I know you are, to serve on the Workforce Development Board with somebody like Michelle, who is such a wealth of a regional, more than just Rockland, but a regional here in the Lower Hudson, you know, resource to our business community, to make sure that, again, continue that advocacy and to keep chipping away, as Debbie said, in terms of that you know, just a horrible, you know, just a terrible unemployment rate. But there's just, you know, but you have to flip it. There's such opportunity there to have great work, to have great workers.
And going back to that unemployment rate, especially what we dealt with over the last 4.5 months with COVID-19, unemployment has in many parts of the country skyrocketed. Here we were affected as well. How has the initiative shifted now that we are dealing with a new reality of social distancing? I'm sure there's a lot of individual components that need to be fleshed out, especially within the special needs space, to make sure that there's gainful employment, accessibility. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, Dan, did you want to jump in?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this is to say that the disability community was affected by COVID would be an understatement. You know, what you're seeing
Well
is disproportionate death rates and infection rates that, and it is a huge challenge. And what it threatens to do is relegate many people with disabilities to a class of people who are compelled to live more cloistered or sequestered lives, so to speak. And really what it comes down to is they're the ones who are really depending on the larger cooperation of society with the social mitigation strategies that are really what I think have been effective in this state. So as we look at trying to get people out of their homes and into the mainstream life again, then you know, that's very largely dependent on the community behavior. And so, you know, it really, because this is a group of people who are disproportionately at risk. And so, you know, I just appeal, we want to be informed about this, because, you know, if we're concerned about this issue, then we want to be advocates on that point, because, you know, we don't want to have a class of people, you know, this affects elderly people, this affects all people with disabilities. They disproportionately have these underlying conditions, and the numbers speak for themselves in terms of mortality rates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So well said. So well said. It's yeah, it's quite terrifying, obviously, and you know, we can boil it down as you know, as simply to wear a mask, to do the social distancing, not just talk about it. I don't want to get on a soapbox about this issue, obviously.
Yeah.
But you know, this is, you know, but to your question, Tom, right? As it affects this community,
right.
We need to make sure that we are protecting the most vulnerable among us, to make sure that they can survive and we can live and thrive, and then be able to succeed. You know, I had a quote that I come across. You know, is any society, you know, Cardinal Roger Mahoney reminded us that any society, any nation is judged on the basis of how it treats its weakest members.
Yeah,
at least
100%.
You know, et cetera. So we just need to do better, and I'll leave it.
A few weeks. I haven't seen my uncle. I call him and visit him a lot. He's a big Yankees fan. I can't even imagine what it's like for him to not have his primary happiness with the Yankees games on the radio. Thankfully, it's come back over the last 2 weeks, so he's happy about that. But I wanted to go see him, so I dropped off he's really big into baseball cards. So I found an album full of baseball cards, and I dropped it off to him at the group home where he lives, without going into detail. But I couldn't go in. I didn't even ask to go in. So I saw him through the window, and we had a conversation back and forth through the window. And it was bittersweet, because, you know, I miss hanging out with him, and you know, hopefully things will get back to normal. But it was I think rough for both of us, but probably rougher for me, because the first thing he saw was the baseball cards. He's like, all right, I'm going to mess with this for a while.
If I was going to give advice to family members about what to do, Tom, that's exactly what you did, was exactly what my advice would be. I mean, stay connected, but do it in a safe way. That's beautiful. Bring something that's personally meaningful.
Yeah.
You get an A.
Thank you. Phone calls, definitely phone calls, you know, contact them. Yeah, I'll soapbox for a minute. So I'll just say this generally. I know for a fact that group homes, I mean, you know, the facilities typically take care of the people with special needs pretty well, but that connection with the family is really important. And I'm sure that there's some that don't connect with their loved ones. And I know several instances where it's been years since they've been in contact with their parents or family. So if you're watching this and you haven't talked with your loved ones that's maybe in a group home or in some type of a program, reach out to them. Take 5 minutes, give a phone call.
Yeah, it's really critical. You know, those are that's the spice of life ultimately, right? It's those connections. It's a lot of what I'm, you know, very fortunate, humbled to do with a lot of my clients. I don't want to soapbox either. You know, talking about supplemental needs. Those are the things that go beyond food, shelter, housing, and that's life. That's, you know, it's that human connection. And again, being part of communities and hearing those voices, you know, of families that aren't able to connect, understandably, because we want to make sure that we're keeping everybody healthy and everybody safe in a global pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom, your story really, you know, just affected me because it's those little things that can make a tremendous difference in somebody's life. And again, it goes beyond just, you know, just clothing and shelter. I see. Yeah, Vanessa.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt for a second.
No.
One of the things that you were saying before, what can the community at large do? I know all agencies have a list of people who don't have families and are looking for advocates to speak up for them and be their family and, you know, send cards and visit and everything else.
Is that, you said that there's a resource for that, or?
I know that I was, someone reached out to me to be an advocate for somebody who lives in a group home who doesn't have any family. All the care design, life plan, all the care agencies have a list of people who don't have families, and all the agencies have a list of people who don't have families.
Is that collated across? I mean, those are, of course, are CCOs, you know, organizations that,
right,
you know, et cetera, that take care. Does that list at least locally live someplace? In other words, you know, could that be? I'm not, you know, a cross agency, or like, how would a member of the public that says, you know, something I've really been affected by, you know, like a conversation like this and want to do something, you know, like how would they access that and say, you know, how do they, you know, they vet it? I know we're running up on time, but
well,
just kind of curious. Yeah.
The care organizations really have to be the conduit for that, only because of confidentiality issues. You can't really publish them. So, but just to reiterate Vanessa's point, when you talk to people with disabilities and they have an open conversation and they tell you what's important to them, probably the first thing they'll mention is their family. They'll mention their people. They'll talk about who they're connected to. This is an essential aspect of their identity. So to Tom's point, it's staying connected. It's like we can't, it has so much, even people who don't speak, even people who have, you know, issues with communicating and letting people know that there is an interaction, it's so essential to their well-being. And for us who are on the care side of this, it's really evident in what we see in people and how they respond, and also how they connect to the other people that they live with and share their lives with.
Absolutely. I know that we're running up against you know, the end here, but just wanted to mention, you know, somebody that was very instrumental in developing, you know, some of these, you know, some of this advocacy. I was fortunate to be honored by Bridges a couple of years ago for William Mullin, who's actually, as you'll see here, and I think Tom pulled up actually his obituary, who had served as a systems advocate for the Rockland Independent Living Center, which is now called Bridges, and had provided that it's a perfect segue again, providing basic access. He operated their cyber cafe, providing computers and internet access, you know, which is essential, you know, and again, something that folks take for granted, something that does not come even, and that is what the ADA has been able to do. It was very humbling for me to receive that recognition, and I've, you know, been able to fuel that and to use that to empower folks, you know, just across the spectrum and of a wide range of areas, to make sure that we're continuing to keep those voices, to keep those, you know, to keep those issues alive, and to focus on it in so many policy areas, especially in this time. So I just wanted to make sure, you know, we made mention of his, like, you know, of his tremendous legacy here in Rockland County.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a couple thoughts as well. You know, the ADA, we think of it, or at least the society in general thinks of it as, you know, as an issue of altruism. And like all civil rights legislation, I think it also opened up a world of possibilities for the larger society. I mean, where people are allowed to participate, where they're allowed to be part of the economy, what you see is a unique kind of contribution. And I think the most obvious case is you see people like Stephen Hawkins, who taught us about the nature of the universe. If we didn't have an inclusive society, that is a contribution that would have been lost. But that's really in the most obvious case. You know, what I'd like people to throw out to everyone is, you know, it's estimated that fully a third of us, sometime in our lifetime, will experience some kind of issue of access or functional needs. One of us will have a family member or something. So when we look at disability, we're looking at something that has the potential to touch every family in America. And so though the societal view is very much like, well, this is a unique social and cultural group, it is, in fact, we're not talking about them, we're talking about us. And then a lot of these issues are grounded in in a certain amount of self-interest. You know, what happens is the manner in which we employ the ADA has a lot to do, maybe what determines the quality of our older lives. You know, it could be, you know, what happens to our children. It could be all kinds of things. And so if we look at it from those lenses, but when we look at the kind of challenges that we face, I think we have to really acknowledge the fact that as a society, we have a very serious cultural aversion to the notion of dependence. It's the thing none of us want to be. And yet, you know, we don't have any trouble hiring somebody to cut our grass. You know, I would go to you as a lawyer and say, well, you know the law and I don't. But the idea of receiving personal care and being vulnerable in that way is a thing we really don't want to deal with. And so it really speaks to the idea of, you know, what does it mean to be an inclusive society? Are we looking at people in terms of us and them, or are we really looking at the idea that they are us, they're a part of us? And, you know, a joke I used to tell is when I first started working in this field, I came to work in a group home for my mother. And the joke was that she, you know, there was some confusion as to whether I was a service recipient or not. And I kind of laugh at it at the time because it's funny, but in fact, when I look back on it and I look at the value that I've taken from working with people with disabilities over all these years, it's really more about, you know, I didn't go into this because I wanted to help people. I went into it because I really like these people. Mm-hmm. And something unique and valued in their contribution. And I think, you know, as we become a more inclusive society, our hearts and minds are really open to that idea. And, you know, I can't really tell you what it is. You know, I work with all different kinds of people. In some cases, I've spent hours sitting next to trying to understand a person who has no language, who seemingly doesn't know what's going on, spending time watching them with their family, trying to see, like, what is there? And in so many cases, you see this spark of life, of identity there that, you know, is inspired. And the thing is, most people just really don't have the kinds of experiences to understand that. And unfortunately, it's not something that I can describe in economic terms, but it's a value.
Time. It absolutely takes time. And I have a quirky pop culture reference to this. So there's I'm a big fan of Star Trek, and in Star Trek The Next Generation, there's this episode where Captain Picard has to meet up with one that has a completely different language. I mean, real, just symbolic language. And they ended up on a planet together, and they had to figure out each other's language before some sort of bad, huge thing came after them. And there was, you know, a lot of symbolism involved, but it was interesting how it just took time. It took time in order to understand the other person. And since we're a society that's geared around the idea of trying to get things done as quickly as possible, but the problem is we dump so many other things onto that time frame, so that the thing where we're caring for someone, caring takes time, bottom line. Right. So, absolutely. Yeah, and I don't have a solution for it. The only thing I could say is if there's someone that we care about, we just try to block out as much time as possible really understand that individual, whoever it may be.
Well, I'll just share one personal story as well. There's a woman I met who over at Juanio, and the first time I met her, I was introduced, and when I met her, I could tell she was struggling to tell me something. You know, her disability was such that it affected her speech, so she had to kind of spell out something on a message board, on a Dynavox. And so I kind of got the idea right away that this is time to just take a chair and, you know, take a breath and wait and listen. Well, that forged the whole relationship. She's the head of our self-advocacy group now, and she can only communicate using a letter board, and yet, and even though she complains vehemently about being home during the COVID, it's almost like she's created all these connections of people who she communicates through this video chat. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it's just a story. What unfolds in your life is a connection to people whom you otherwise wouldn't have known or couldn't have known or wouldn't have taken the time, as you say, Tom, to sit there and listen and to find out what they're about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that actually is a big piece right now, again, in terms of our education, you know, the special education community, of what the debate is in terms of how to bring our kids back. You know, like, you know, and we talk about the different groups, but our special needs kids right now, it's very difficult to be able to get, you know, basic special education and related services through a screen.
Right.
The tactile, you know, and it's tactile. And I think that it's making sure that voice is at the table, that voice is heard. We totally understand that so many groups are that are affected. All of us as parents are affected, you know, neurotypical and special, you know, and neurodiverse alike. But, you know, it's those priorities. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's the work. And it's making sure that all of us, you know, just have that level, you know, that conscious raising, and are just aware of that. And also can then speak up and say, you know, something, maybe those spots would be better utilized. And these are not easy conversations. We're in such difficult times that we have to make these decisions. But, you know, that's how you make policy. You know, and
absolutely.
So,
and I think the point you touched on is so important. Is these things are not either or propositions. Okay, when people are isolated, okay, that represents a certain amount of damage to the person. And so you have the issue of people's health and well-being that they may or may not. We don't know whether children with disabilities, how much more they may or may not be susceptible to severe COVID. We don't know. And the thing is, we can't really take the idea that we're blanket, we're going to say better safe than sorry, because that's the mentality that returns people to institutions. So it's really, it's a complicated, nuanced, person by person kind of understanding. You know, to deal with it otherwise is to not recognize that people are individuals and that we have to look at them that way and kind of deal with this very complicated problem in a kind of nuanced way and not with some cookie cutter solution. It doesn't work that way.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful discussion. We unfortunately do have to end just for the purpose of time. I see that there's been a lot of chat in the group, just individual messages going back and forth. I encourage you all to communicate with each other offline, or actually really online via email. There's never any offline anymore. It's all online. But I want to say this has been great for all of you. Thank you. And notably, thank you to Robert Pitkofsky, our speaker today. And, you know, my instincts were right about you, Robert. I just had a feeling that, I mean, it's not just about chatty, but really a good, helpful facilitator. There are some where I, you know, have to focus in 100%, and some I only 95%, so I could grab some coffee. And that's what happened today. I was listening in almost as a casual listener, and I really, really learned a lot today.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Grateful to make sure that we're raising all these issues, and so great, you know, to spend time with all of you, you know, on this historic week of celebrating this law that has really moved so many people, millions and millions of people forward. So thank you for that platform.
Robert Pitkofsky. I'll put his contact information on the screen one more time, just in case you need to reach out to him. So we have 151 North Main Street, Suite 204, New City, New York, phone number and email address. And all this information, again, will be available via rocklandswork.org. We'll have the video as well as a PDF download of this presentation on the directly underneath the video. Also, there is a resource tab for all of the information that we talked about today. One last note, just in case you wanted to get almost an inner world of understanding what it's like to have really severe disability, check out, it's actually a movie about Stephen Hawking, which is called The Theory of Everything. It definitely threw me for a loop. It's an excellent movie. So that's it for today. Our meeting next week, we'll have our guest Bill Madden from Suez Water. I recently worked with Bill Madden on the Bounce Back Stony Point campaign, basically just trying to build up local businesses and retailers after or as the COVID-19 crisis starts to subside. So he'll be talking about some things that Suez Water is doing, maybe some adjustments over the course of time. So we'll look forward to his broadcast. Other than that, I am going to be headed to whitewater rafting tonight. I'm actually doing moonlight rafting tomorrow in the Poconos. So I'll be taking off, but I will be posting this video online as usual to Rockland Work. Thank you, everybody who participated today. Thank you for everybody that continued to make Friday Forums a really great venue for us to talk about the various issues of Rockland County. And I know you all do it with heart. So until next week, take care and God bless you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have
a great weekend. Be safe.
Thank you. Have fun.
Bye-bye.